Here goes nothing. All right, here we go. All right. Oops. There we go. We'll do it like that. No, that's not working. All right. Well, welcome in, everybody. Episode 56 of the Philly Sports 444 podcast. I'm your host, Dom Lewis. Shout out to B, man. She got this lighting ring, and I'm trying to do some new things with this pod. So shout out to B. And here we go. Episode 56. A lot to talk about today. Eagles got a win finally. 25-20 win against the 49ers yesterday. Most people counted them out. Most people didn't think that the Eagles would actually win that game, including myself until later on. I kind of had like a feeling they would make it competitive, but I didn't think that they would win the game. So I'm really happy about that win. I'm just adding this to some groups on Facebook here. Let's see here. Yeah, I'm happy about the win. I'll say that. I'm satisfied that Eagles, as hard as it was, they pulled it out. They pulled it out, and it wasn't easy. They were banged up, but it's funny. Like, this group just plays well, or they just play and they do the unpredictable when their backs are against the wall. When they're not expected to do something, when they're expected to lose, that's when they fool you and they win. They just, it's funny. I was talking to my man Terrell Willis last night. Shout out to Terrell. Please support his podcast as well. Your Fans Need You podcast, MER Rant as well. And 215 Sports. Me, Ernie Terrell, will come back. But we were talking last night, and he was saying that this group they don't have like an identity. They lack an identity. They lack like winning culture. And their culture or their style of play is to win when their backs are against the wall. That's what it comes down to with them. They don't play from ahead. They don't play well with being the favorite. They need to be the underdogs. And that's not as me and Rel were saying last night, that's not a winning culture. I'll get into that, but I want to talk about the game first and talk about the Eagles getting their first win of the season. And for what it's worth, the Eagles are first in the NFC East today. With a 1-2-1 record, the Philadelphia Eagles are first place in the NFC East. That just shows you how dreadful this division really is. But, it is what it is. It's the first 4 games of a season that's been cut down. Their team's playing well. In the NFC East, none of the teams are playing well. So, it's what it is. But let's get into the game. I got some keys to victory, I think, that allowed the Eagles to actually win this game last night. I think the first being the Eagles. Well, Carson played. I'll put this on Carson because he's been catching a lot of heat over the last few weeks, and I think last night he played well. Now his numbers are not eye popping. They're not 450 yards passing for 40 attempts and 30 completions. It's nothing like that. It's just simply him making better decisions. And I think that's the difference in last night's game versus the previous 3 games. And really, it's more so the previous, I guess you could say the previous 10 quarters of football. Because before last night, in the first 2 quarters of the Washington game, they played well, quote unquote. And then everything fell apart. And his decision-making was really bad. Well, I'll get to you in a second. Just give me a second. I'll address your question. Shout out to you, bro. Thank you for asking the question. So I think the biggest thing was his decision making, and he played within himself last night. Like, he still played like Carson Wentz, He wasn't forced to just be in the pocket and just be this quarterback that he's not. And he was put into positions last night and that allowed him to be successful. 18 for 28, 193. He had 2 touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown, and an interception. Now, I think the biggest thing was for him to scramble and get out of the pocket. I said that before. He had some confidence last night that he didn't have over the last 10 quarters. So the last 2 games and a half. He had some confidence last night that he could really ball and he could really put this team in a position to win. And he just battled. He battled. He was willing to do whatever it took to win last night. And I think that's the Carson Wentz that we are accustomed to. Now, people have their own perceptions of Carson Wentz. People say he's not a good quarterback. People say he's average. People think that he's, a couple steps from being elite. I think he's a good quarterback. I like Carson Wentz. I'm a fan of Carson Wentz. That doesn't stop me from criticizing him when he plays bad. But I think that last night is just a glimpse of what you can see or what you will see with Carson Wentz when you put him in a position to be successful. And the biggest thing was getting him out of the pocket, letting him roll out, make plays. If the play isn't there, him now granted, last night he held onto the ball a little bit longer than I liked him to, but he was able to make some plays while holding on to the ball and, escaping pressure. And that's who Carson Wentz really is. We have to learn how to live with that Carson Wentz. Live and die with that version of Carson Wentz, because that's who he is. That's what allows him to be successful. 18 for 28, 193, 2 touchdowns total, 1 interception, quarterback rating of 81 or something like that. But I think it's more so the decision-making of his last night, the confidence that he played with. That allowed him to be successful. That allowed this team to win. I think the second the second key to victory was Doug coaching with some confidence last night. Doug allowed Carson to be successful by allowed him to roll out and putting him in those positions, calling those right plays in order for him to be successful. I think it was a team effort by Doug and Carson last night. They both have been having some very crappy weeks, and they've been getting blamed for a lot. People want to replace Carson. People want Doug fired, And I was one of the people Doug, don't fix this. He got to go. And I know that it's not a reality because of the equity he has built into this organization. But my displeasure was in him not allowing this team to be successful, not setting them up to be successful by calling the right plays. Him just being so stubborn and not allowing this team to get into a position to be successful. That was my gripe with him. And I think last night he did a better job in allowing, you know what, I'm just going to be aggressive, Doug. I'm going to put this team in, and I'm going to adjust to the game. I think that's the biggest thing, because Doug can be stubborn at times. But Doug adjusted last night. He allowed this team to be successful by adjusting to the game, by looking at series by series what's going on, play by play what's going on. And now, granted, every play didn't work, but every play is not going to work. And I'm not saying he called a perfect game last night because he didn't. Miles Sanders didn't play that last series, which was a problem to me because Miles Sanders needs to be your bell cow. And I would have liked Miles Sanders to get more touches. I looked at his stats today. I think he was 13 for 46, 13 rushes for 46 yards, and he had 2 receptions for 30 yards. I kind of want Miles Sanders to get 20 touches. He kind of needs to get, whether it's 15 rushes and 5 passes, I think Miles Sanders needs to get the ball at least 20 times in order for this team to be successful. And now, granted, I like the mix-up last night. I think that Eagles overall were very balanced. They called some rollouts for Carson to actually run. And it's tough because they don't want Carson to get hurt. That's been the gripe. He's so injury-prone. They don't want Carson to get hurt. But you got to allow Carson to be himself at the end of the day. He has to be himself. And that's the only way you're going to be successful with him as your quarterback. That's it. That's it, and that's all. So I said that Carson played well last night, Doug coached well, and I think the balance was the third key that allowed this team to be successful. I don't see teams that are very successful when they throw the ball 50 times. A lot of the Dallas Cowboys. Dak threw the ball 60 times yesterday. Yeah, he had 500 yards passing, but they lost the game. And most of those stats were in garbage time. Most of those stats were when they were trying to mount a comeback. And the Browns just trying to hold them off. But you're not successful when you throw the ball over 50 times. That's something that I learned by like watching some tape. And I've heard some people say it, like, and it just kind of added up over years. Like, if you throw the ball more than 50, you're limiting chances in order to win the game. And I can only think of one time where I've seen a quarterback throw over 60 times and they won a game. And that was when Tom Brady threw 62 passes in the Super Bowl to beat Atlanta. But then again, that's Atlanta. And Atlanta always allows people to come back. But I digress. Having to bounce 28 passes, 28 rushes, that allowed them to be successful. The ball for 29 minutes and 29 seconds. That allowed the Eagles to be successful last night. And you saw it, on the score. They're reflected against the score. 25-20, Eagles win. I think the fourth key was that the Eagles played really, really well in defense last night. I think the secondary still struggles, and the linebacking core sucks. But Darius Slay is a player. And if you look at some of the plays he made last night, yeah, it may not show up as interceptions. Yeah, it's not going to show up that he got a sack or a forced fumble. But just the pressure that he puts on receivers. He's a really, really good player, and he makes the secondary that much better. The pressure's off of the other players that much more because of the player that he is. And you got to respect that. That's a good player, man. And then him creating that pressure in the back, in the secondary, that allows defense to get home. Defense had 5 sacks yesterday. 5 sacks. On top of the 8-sack performance that he had last week. So they're getting home a little bit. Getting home. Jim Schwartz mixed up some pressures last night. Called a little bit more blitzes last night. They got home yesterday. Jannard Avery had a good game. I think Brandon Graham had a good game. I think Fletcher Cox, although it didn't show up on the stat sheet as sacks, he had a good game. Josh Sweat had a good game. Like I said, the linebacking core is terrible. And Nate Gary is not a good linebacker at all. He's always lost in coverage. He's always out of position. I think for what it's worth, I think that he might show effort in practice, but he's not a good linebacker. He's just not. And he's going to continue to be a liability until they make a switch. Now, they put in the guy Edwards last night. Edwards, I thought he played pretty well until he got hurt. Avery played well last night, but that guy, I just think Jerry is just not a good. He's not a good linebacker. He's not. And I had a fifth point. I got to find it. Hold on. Sorry, I did have a fifth point. Let's see here. Oh, yeah. Of course. Aggressiveness. Doug was aggressive last night. I think that last week was, I'm not going to say it was a fluke. I will say that, hey, man, he had a moment last week. That's not who Doug usually is. Last night, you didn't see that version. You saw aggressive Doug last night. He went for it on 4th down twice last night and converted both 4th downs. And he also went for the 2-point conversion. I know we were all like, what are you doing? But, hey, it worked. That 2-point conversion worked. It worked in their favor, and that put that much more pressure on San Francisco to actually score a touchdown in the end, which they didn't get, and allowed the Eagles to get the victory last night. So having Doug be aggressive Doug, that's what we always say it in this town. Aggressive Ben Simmons is the best Ben Simmons. Aggressive Tobias Harris is the best Tobias Harris. Aggressive Doug Peterson is the best version of Doug Peterson. Win, lose, or draw, that's the best version that you're going to get of Doug Peterson when he is aggressive, when he is fearless. He got a book named Fearless. Like he has to be fearless when he's coaching. He has to be fearless, and he has to be willing to adapt to the game. And that's what makes Doug Peterson a good coach. Now, there are some things to clean up with this team. I still didn't like – and listen, you got to give that offensive line some credit last night. Like, those guys – I think the only starter that was in the game for the whole game was Kelsey, because Lane Johnson was in and out of the lineup. He got a lot of playing left tackle. Herbig was playing, and Herbig is not that good of a player. No, it's Matt Pryor that's not that good of a player. He's just not that good of a player. But then again, hey, you gotta give them some credit. I think Stoutland had those guys ready to play last night, and they played well for what it's worth. I mean, Mailata had that one hiccup, that one false start, but he's a young player in the sense of playing in the NFL, and I think overall he played well. I mean, he outplayed his counterpart, Trent Edward. I forget his name. Left tackle for San Francisco. Dude that used to play for Redskins or Washington football team. But he outplayed him last night. Should have outplayed him last night. I mean, Sweat had his way with him last night. I think Barnett had his way with him last night. That dude looked washed last night. He looked like him and Jason Peters looked like the same player, honestly. So I give a lot of credit to the offensive line and the way they played last night. I think the defense played well. I think it was a total team effort. And by no means are they an elite team. By no means are they a good team. But last night was a good win. And I know they went against a backup quarterback in Mullins. And then they called in the other dude who I don't even – C.J. Beathard. But I think overall it was a total team effort. And they were able to get the dub last night. And they did it in a tough spot. They were away. They hadn't had a win on the season at all. They're playing against a good 49ers team. Regardless of their injuries, they're still a good team. And they were able to pull it out last night in prime time. So I give them a lot of credit. You know, they got a lot of things they need to work on, though. That linebacking core is sorry, man. Man, it is so bad. They almost had me ready to be like, you know what? They need to call Bradham back here because this linebacking core here is sorry, man. They are bad, and I get it. Like that's bad drafting by Howie, bad acquisitions by Howie. And we can get into Howie on another podcast because I can get on him forever about the bad that he's done in his organization and how he's been able to escape the axe. But it was a good win for them last night. I think this doesn't mean that they turned the corner by any means. I don't think that they turned the corner. I think that it was a good win for them last night, and they're able to build on it. I think it would be disingenuous to be like, oh, they're going to win next week in Pittsburgh. But I will say that they have a shot to win because I don't think Pittsburgh's that much of an elite team in my eyes. Like, they're a good team, but they're not better than Baltimore right now in my eyes. They're not as explosive as Baltimore, and I think the Browns have more talent than Pittsburgh has. Pittsburgh has the coaching as far as overall coaching, but I think the Browns just have more talent and they have more explosiveness than Pittsburgh has right now. So I think, there's a real chance that the Eagles could win next week. Or at least be in the game. I will say that, at least be in the game. To me, it's not a rollover by any means. I don't think they get curb stomped or anything like that. I think they kind of have a formula that they did this week with allowing Carson to get out of the pocket. Defense actually getting home a little bit. I think Slay is big time. Slay makes some big time plays. He's able to stick on the number one receiver at all times. It doesn't matter who the receiver is. And they got a chance. They have a chance. I just think that and Schwartz has to understand, like, you got to attack these quarterbacks, man. You got to attack these people. Like, you can't just be like, my front four is just going to get home. And I love their rotation, that way they rotate the defensive line, which they always have. But they have to get some pressure, more pressure. And because they don't have the linebackers to really sit back and cover and, be disciplined. Because their linebackers are not disciplined at all. They're just not. They're not. And I really feel like they're not a good defense. They can be good as far as the piece that they have as far as on the front, the front four and with Slay back there. But I tell you, I said the linebacker core is bad, but you know what? Mills is still bad. Mills is still sorry, man. I'm sorry. He's still not a good player. I think McLeod is still good as far as just being disciplined and just knowing where to be at all times. But Mills still isn't good. He's not good. And I get it. The green hair and people love him, like his personality and his swag. That don't mean he's good. He's just not a good player to me. I mean, he can go after the season's over, honestly. They only signed him to a one-year deal, so he can go explore free agency after this is over. My man Marcus said Howie is trash. My dad said Carson stinks, but he doesn't. I know he's upset because, Carson played well last night and he got proved wrong last night. But that's okay. That's okay. My man Rel said, with Dak performing, how he do? How is with Dak performing? How he do? I think he's over Wentz. Okay, I understand what you're saying. Right now he is. Right now he's a better quarterback than Wentz is. And listen, I'll be real. Like I think I like Dak. Honestly, I know I'm an Eagles fan, and I hate the Cowboys. I hate the Cowboys. I think Dak's a good player. I think that they're putting too much on Dak right now. Like Dak shouldn't have to throw for 400 yards to win a game. And they're not winning. That's the thing. They're not winning with him throwing for that much. Like the formula down there, they need to run the football. And their defense is sorry, yes, but when you run the football, you keep the ball out of the you keep the defense off the field, and you allow the other team to have to play from behind. They're not allowing him to be successful, like with him throwing for 400 yards every week. They're literally a point away from being, or 2 points away from being 0-4. That defense is sorry down there. Like they're not good. I mean, they're a talented team, talented bunch, but they're not a good team down there. And I never really thought McCarthy was a good coach, but they're sorry right now. And they have these expectations every year because they're the Dallas Cowboys. But when people look at them, they have to be real with themselves. Like the culture down there, they're not a winning team. Like they just don't play winning football. They're talented, they are entertaining, but they're not a good team. Like I'm watching Kansas City right now, and in New England, and these teams are good. Like I'm just watching. Well, Mahomes I don't know what Mahomes just did, but he just gave the football up. But that don't mean he's not a good player. Like he's still a good player. This defense from New England is good, man. I actually bet New England tonight. And I'm not even a betting dude, but I had to bet them because they're a good team. Like I knew him not having Cam would suck, but they're a good team. I mean, Hoyer is not a good quarterback, but I'm just looking at the defense. Like that New England defense is really, really good. They're just so disciplined. My man Face says, Win was trash to me. I need Alshon back so I can keep the faith. Alshon is washed, man. He's slow. I mean, he can catch the ball, though. I mean, I would take any kind of receiver that we can get right now. I would love to have Deshaun in the lineup, and I would love to have Alshon back, but I don't know, man. I don't know. I think the Eagles right now, they're just not a good team. And I'm going to say this about the Eagles real fast. I'll try to move on from the Eagles because I want to say this real fast, though. I think that, and I talked to my man Terrell last night, I think the Eagles are afraid to take a step back. I think when it comes down to it, they're afraid to take a step back and build for the long term. And I thought they were kind of doing that last year, like at the end of last season. But no, they're not doing it. They're trying to hold on to being in the conversation. I don't think they're in the conversation anymore. And I think they're afraid to really kind of wipe the slate clean with all these players, older players, and kind of start from anew. I think they're just afraid to do it. And they're going to need to do that and they're going to need to actually draft players and draft well and get players on the cheap in order to try to build this team up and build a winning culture here because this isn't cutting it. Like, you look at Doug. Doug they won the Super Bowl. He's a Super Bowl winning coach. And I love Doug forever for that. But I look at it and I'm like, outside of that season, Doug hasn't won more than 9 games a season. First season, he won 7-9. The next season, they win the Super Bowl. The next 2 seasons, they go 9-7. One time they win the division, one time they don't. Like, this isn't winning football. And Howie, he said a while ago, like they're trying, they understand that they need to be a number 1 seed in order to have a real shot at winning a Super Bowl. Number 1, number 2 seed. They cannot just crawl into the playoffs. That's not winning football. That's not a winning culture. Like, you're a solid team, yes. You're a team that's always in conversation, yes. But you're never going to be any better than just winning your division. And I think that's what should get Howie fired. Because, like, you haven't set this team up to be successful. to be that team, to be that number 1 seed, to be that number 2 seed. Like, I'm looking at New England and I'm looking at Kansas City right now. They're gonna always be in the conversation for number 1 and number 2. They will always be there for at least for the next 5 years. They will be there. But Eagles they're not going to be any better than just winning their division or winning 10 games. They'll be lucky if they ever win 11 or 12 games again. But they're not the team to win a lot of games in a season. They're just not. They don't instill that kind of confidence in me, like that they can go out and outscore teams. Now, in 2017, it was a different team, and they were explosive, and Carson played out of his mind, and Doug he knew all the plays to call, and they had leadership on the defensive end, and they did everything right that year. Everything fell into place for them, and they had a pretty good schedule to play. Everything fell into place for them, I think. And they beat some tough teams, but for the most part, they had a really good schedule that year that allowed them to even get to the number 1 seed. And they've had tougher schedules because they've been winning the division going to the playoffs. Like, the schedule's been tougher, like, over these last couple of years. And they're just not a team that will outscore a bunch of teams. They're going to have to dog it out with some teams. And I think ultimately you don't win championships that way. I think that you have to be able to score in order to get you to the dance. And then when you're at the dance, you got to be able to defend in order to win. And I'm not sure that the Eagles can do that right now. So I will say that about the Eagles. Like I said, they got a tough test coming up this week with Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's a good team. They're always in the conversation of being one of those top teams, but I think that their issue right now is the quarterback. I think Ben, although he's playing well, I think Ben is over the hill, and this is the last stand for him. And I think every quarterback in his division is going to pass him by. Lamar Jackson's already passed him by, I think. And my uncle calls Lamar Jackson a front runner. He's a Pittsburgh fan. Calls him a front runner. And I get that. I get why he would say that, but I think that, well, you got to stop them from front running them. Like, you got to stop them from actually scoring. Like, that's what Lamar Jackson does because it's easy for him to do. And then I look at, Baker Mayfield. Of course, he's not better than Big Ben, but they got more talent than the Pittsburgh Steelers do. And it's a tough team. It's going to be a tough team. That's, for them to compete with. So I look at their issue as being the quarterback. And although he knows the game, he's old. So we'll see what happens, though. I mean, I can talk about the game later on in the week, but I'm enjoying the win today. I enjoyed the win last night. I enjoyed talking trash to the Cowboys fans because they lost yesterday. Listen, think about that for a second. You score 38 points in a game and you lose because the other team scores 49. You give up the ball so many times. You can't defend the run so bad that they rush for 300 yards on you, 307 yards on you. That just shows me that they got a lot to correct down there. Like, and I understand they're a talented team. I get it. They're going to score points on people. But, man, if you can run the ball that many times, you can keep the ball out of their offensive hands. And I think the only reason that they even had a chance to yesterday is because the Browns had such a bad fourth quarter. I don't think it was for them playing defense on the Browns. I think the Browns had a bad fourth quarter, and they got really conservative. They didn't keep the pedal to the metal yesterday. It could have been like 70 points if the Browns scored it, to be honest with you. But I digress. I want to just talk about this real quick before I get off of here. Sixers, they went out there and they got their guy, and I'm happy about that. They got their guy. They hired Doc Rivers to be the head coach of the Philadelphia 76ers. I'm happy about that because, one, when they when they lost the second round in the playoffs, Clippers, I'm talking the Clippers. The Eagles, the Sixers would really be they should really make a run at Doc. I had no clue they were actually going to do it. I didn't think that they would really, really make that happen. And I'm really, really happy because they went out there, they were aggressive. They got a guy. And now listen, there's no doubt in my mind he's better than Brett Brown. There's no doubt in my mind. But I will say that I feel like the Sixers were always a team to get they would never get the top tier guy. They would always get like the second or third or fourth guy. And, I felt like if they would have hired D'Antoni, that would have been a trap. That would have been no good. And I'm just so happy that they were able to be aggressive and get a guy that has cachet and pedigree in this league and can really make some things happen. And I really, really think that he can get the most out of Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. And if he can't, I don't know who can, honestly. And I'm not just saying that because I heard it somewhere or anything like that. I really, really think that I look at what happened this year with him, and I'm like, yeah, that sucks. They lost in the second round of playoffs at Game 7. They were up 3-1. That's bad. But I've also seen what he did last year when he didn't have that much talent, when they traded away their talent because they were trying to tank, and they still made the playoffs because he did such a good coaching job. They lost in the first round, but he did such a good coaching job last year. They were able to make the playoffs with that team that had no talent on it whatsoever. So Doc Rivers, there's no doubt in my mind that he's a good coach. And there's no doubt in my mind that he can actually coach his team. And he talked about it today. He's on radio with Mike Missinelli. He had a press conference today, all of that stuff. And the couple things I heard him say was, talk about Ben shot. People asked him about Ben shot, of course. And he's like, I'm not as worried about his shot as other people are. But what he said to me, the next part of it, what he said was key to me. He said, my job is to make sure he understands what his shot is. And he's able to take those shots, understanding where he should be shooting the ball on the court and taking those shots accordingly. I think that's the key. I think people worry so much about the shot and are not worried about him scoring the ball and being aggressive. And the key to Ben being successful is actually being aggressive. Think about it. People say it a lot, and I gotta give Devon Givens the credit because he says it. He said it before I heard anyone else say it. Aggressive Ben Simmons is the best Ben Simmons. When Ben is aggressive, he is the best version of himself. When he's attacking, he is the best version. And I talked to my Uncle Lou about it. I talked to some other people about it. When Ben is aggressive, when he is attacking, when he is on the mode, I'm just going to get mine tonight. I don't care. That's when he's the best version of himself. He's able to distribute from there. He's able to actually facilitate from there. That makes him Ben Simmons. That makes him defensive player of the year candidate. And that makes him a first-team defensive player. And that makes him third-team NBA. That makes him that guy. And with Joel Embiid, I just think that we all know Joel Embiid is talented. I don't know what it's going to take for him to be motivated and actually get to that next level of player that he should be, because there's no reason to me why Joel Embiid should say I'm the most dominant player in the league and not be dominant in a series and get swept out of a series. There's no reason to me that he should. Now, listen, some of that is on coaching. Brett he just gets out coached by Brad Stevens all the time. But that's not going to happen with Doc Rivers. You're not just going to out coach Doc. And I get it. I don't think that Doc was out coached in the series versus the Nuggets this year. I think that Paul George just thought it was sweet, and he was going to walk into the Western Conference Finals. And he showed up small in those remaining. When they went up 3-1, he showed up small in those next 3 games, and they weren't able to win. And they didn't defend, and they weren't hungry enough. Some of that is on the player. Some of that is not on the coach. Now, granted, it's going to fall on the coach because he had all this talent. He should have got them to the next level, and he didn't get there. Yeah, I get it. I understand that. But that doesn't mean Doc isn't a good coach. And I look at this opportunity where I think Doc could definitely get this team to the Eastern Conference Final. Now, listen, I don't know what the roster is going to look like whenever the league starts back up, because we don't know, with everything going on with the COVID and the schedule being off. I think the league, they said the last thing I heard was they're going to start in January. I don't know when they're going to start up again. But I will say that I think this team has a really, really good shot in this East Conference now. I get it. The Nets are going to be good. I get it. Boston's still going to be good. The Heat are still going to be good. Toronto's still going to be good. Milwaukee's still going to be good. But I think they got a shot. I think that they need this coaching. They need this. They need this motivation. They need this person here to push them to another level. And It's time for Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons to grow up. Yes. It's time for Tobias Harris to be more aggressive. Yes. I think they can do that with Doc Rivers. And I'm just waiting to see, like, how much I guess, what they're able to do in, like, the last 2 minutes of games. And what that pressure is going to be like for them and how they're able to work through that pressure. Making those small plays next year that they didn't make this year as far as on the defensive end. And making teams, overshadowing teams. Like, they should have been playing bully ball this year. And they should have been overpowering teams with their size and strength. But they weren't able to do that this year for whatever reason. I think most of that is on coaching, but whatever. I'm excited to see the possibility of that, what that would look like with Doc. I am. And we're going to see. We're going to see. I think that the Sixers brass made a good move, understanding they needed to get a guy that would allow them to compete with this Eastern, because the Eastern Conference is not getting any less talented. I mean, we still have Giannis over here. Kevin Durant's coming back next year, and Kyrie's coming back next year. Toronto may take a step back, but they still got Siakam. They won't have Van Vliet, I don't think, anymore, but the Heat are still good. You look at they're in the finals right now. So it's tough. It's going to be tough, but I think they have a good coach that will allow them to actually to get over those things that held them back previously. So we'll see. We'll see. One more thing before I go. Matt Klentak stepped down as far as being the GM of the Phillies. I'll be honest, I'm not that satisfied with that because he should have been fired. When you try to just, like, you did a bad job, you should get fired. If I did a bad job of my job, they'd fire me. They try to put me in positions to make me successful. And if I still wasn't successful after that happened to me, they would fire me. When you don't do a good job and you've had years to do it and they put you in different positions and they allow you to spend their money and they spent their money on you to be successful and you still weren't successful, they would fire you. That's what they should do. That's what's right to happen because you're obviously not getting the job done. He didn't get fired. He got, I guess, demoted or whatever, or redirected, whatever you want to call it. He didn't get fired, and it's not a good look. And the person they have taken over, I don't even know the guy. I think it's Ned York. I think is his name. The fact that you're not even being aggressive trying to get a GM that's going to make this thing work is a problem to me. So, I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know with the Phillies. The whole JT Realmuto thing, they should have got him signed. They didn't sign him. Klentak still being in the organization somehow, not being reprimanded for his actions. I mean, I don't know. He might have got reprimanded behind closed doors, but, at the end of the day, they're not, to me, they're not trying to really switch this thing. They're not really trying to change it. They're not really trying to be successful rather than being in a comfort zone. And that's a problem to me because they'll just be the same sucky team for the next 5-6 years. We'll just have Bryce Harper on the squad, but I don't know. They don't even have a farm system, so you can't even rely on young players coming up. I don't know. This is all bad if you ask me. And Matt Niskanen retired today from the Flyers, so Flyers still going to be a good team next year, I think. They re-signed Moose. They re-signed a couple other players. They're still going to be a good team. I mean, as long as they got Carter Hart in goal and Kevin Hayes on this team, I think, Konechny, those guys, I think they'll still be a good team. I know I don't talk about hockey that much, but I was all in on the Stanley Cup playoffs. I really was. Saturday they lost that Game 7, but they played well. They played well that series, I think. They really fought and they clawed that series. And I think they're only going to go up from here. So we'll see what happens with the Flyers. That's all I got, though. I will post this on YouTube. If you're not subscribed to me on YouTube, please subscribe. It's at 444 Podcast everywhere. So it's that on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. On YouTube, it's YouTube/444 Podcast, FOR 4 Podcast. I will post this on, of course, it'll be available on Spotify, Apple, Google, Anchor. It's trying to think of it. So if you go to Apple or you go to Spotify, I know most people have Spotify. You can just search 444 podcast, FOUR, the number 4, then podcast. And I'm right there. I'm right there on there. All right. So listen, please subscribe. Please listen. Please share the podcast. Share it. Even if you can't listen all the way, share it with somebody else that you know will listen. And I appreciate you guys for tuning in. And until next time, y'all. Peace.